We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, 10 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says Gufa. So the Gemara before brought a machlekes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer, whether one is allowed to buy a paraduma from Goyim. And the Gemara brought a explanation from Shiloh. He said that Rabbi Eliezer says you're not allowed to buy from Goyim because of a pasuk where it says Dabab bnei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha paraduma. So you read the word v'yikchu not only regarding buying, but also v'yikachu, that the one that sells should also be a yid. So the Gemara is going to ask now on this explanation of Shiloh. So Gufa, to go back to the point itself that we mentioned before. Tani Shiloh said, my time that Rabbi Eliezer, d'chsiv dabab bnei Yisrael v'yikchu bnei Yisrael. So it means, actually you read it, the Gemara is here, is reading it, v'yikachu bnei Yisrael yikachu, that is, v'ein oyev d'kechavim yikachu. That you buy from a yid and you don't buy from a guy. Frek the Gemara. If this is the reasoning of Rabbi Eliezer, so ela me'ata, if so, how about a different pasuk where it says the same term? Daber abnei Yisrael, v'yikchu truma, regarding the mitzvah of bringing all the donations to build the Mishkan. So there it also uses the term v'yikchu. So hachanami, are you going to say there as well, the bnei Yisrael yikachu ve'ein oyev d'kechavim yikachu, that you have to take and buy only from Yidden, and you can't buy or take donations or any of the materials needed for the Mishkan from Goyim? It's if you're applying this reading of the word v'yikchu, v'yikachu. And if you'll say hachanami, yeah, maybe that's the halacha. That everything for the Mishkan, they brought only from Yidden. But that can't be, because V'amar Rav Yehuda Mashmuel Shalus Rabbi Eliezer, they asked Rabbi Eliezer, Ad heichon kibud aveim, tell us how far, to what extent the person should honor his father and mother. Amar lehem, so he told them, Tzu uru'u ma asa oiv kechavim echad, la'aviv ba'ashkelin. What did this guy do for his father, V'dama ben Esina Shemai, and his name was Dama ben Esina? What happened? Pa machas bikshu mimenu avonim le'efoid b'shishim riboy schar. That once the Chachamim wanted to buy from him the precious gems that were needed for the ephod, for the Kohen Gadol, and they were ready to pay 600,000 gold coins. But Rav Kahana Masni, Rav Kahana said that it was even more. B'shmeinim riboy, 800,000 gold coins. And the keys to the place, to the treasure chest where those precious gems were being kept, were under his father's head when his father was asleep. And he didn't cause any pain to his father to wake him up. That's the extent of kibbud aveim. So the question of the Gemara is that from here you see that they were buying the avnei, the shayam that are used for the ephod from a guy. So, but it says in the pasuk, yikchu, and you should read it yikachu, according to Shiloh, that you're not allowed to buy from a guy. So the Gemara answers that in the continuation of the pasuk, when it mentions the avnei shayam, so avnei shayam hifsik inyan, because it says avnei shayam, which are these precious stones that were used for the ephod, but it says it without a vav. It just says in the new pasuk avnei shayam separately. So therefore, this is a new thing that says that the term yikachu, that it says in the beginning that you only buy from a guy, does not apply to the avnei shayam. After this, in the pasuk it says avnei shayam, and then it says ve'avnei miluim la ephod v'la. Also, the precious gems, avnei miluim refers to those stones that were used for the chayshen. The avnei shayam is for the ephod that was on the shoulders of the kohen, and then there's for the chayshen. But over here it does say a vav, the hada arve. So that means that the pasuk, by writing the vav, by the ve'avnei, shows that it is connected to the beginning of the parsha where it mentions the 13 or 15 materials that were used for the Mishkan. So you can't say that the word avnei without the vav separates from the beginning of the parsha here. This is Rashi's pshat. There's a discussion here in Taisus about this, because it's still possible to say that avnei, the fact that the word avnei in the beginning of the pasuk does not say with a vav, it separates from before. And then the fact that it writes ve'avnei miluim doesn't mean that it has to be connecting back to the beginning of the parsha where it says v'yikachu. Ve'avnei is just connected to what it says here, avnei shayam, but it doesn't prove that it goes back to the beginning. So therefore, Taisvis, one of the pshatim over here is that the chayshen and the ephod are considered to be one metzias. So if regarding the avnei miluim, it says the term ve'avnei, and the Gemara says that the ve, it's an extra letter vav. So even if you're going to say that only the ve'avnei miluim connects back to before, but not avnei shayam, but if when you get to the chayshen, the pasuk shows that it does connect back to what it says before, that you only could buy from Yidden. So then we should apply the same to the Ephod itself, because the Ephod and the Choshen are to some extent considered to be like one beged. They're connected to each other. That's one pshat, another pshat over here in this Gemara. Okay, so now the Gemara answers. This is actually, sorry, again, the Gemara is asking first another question on this. So this is all a question on Shila that says that from V'yikochu, you would learn they could only buy from a Yid, not from a Goy. Another question on this is, Katani Seife, it says further about this story with Adama ben Esina, that L'shana Cheres, what happened the following year? Noldaloi paraduma bedre. So he had a paraduma that was born by his flock. So Nichnas Chacham Yisrael, that's like the Chachamim came to him and Amar Lahem, and now Adama ben Esina said to them, Yideya ni aino bachem shemani vakish mikem kol momishim ba'ilam atanoisnali. If I'll ask any price in the world for the paraduma, you're going to pay me, because he didn't need a paraduma that would be ready to pay anything. But achshav now, any mevakish mikem ela oisim mamish efsadti b'shvil laba. I'm only asking you for the price what I lost last year, whether 600,000 to 800,000 the gold coins. That's the price that he asked for. So here we see this is not regarding Avnei Shoyim or Avnei Miluim. This is regarding a paraduma. And the Chachmei Yisrael are buying the paraduma from a guy. So how could you say that Rabbi Eliezer holds that you can't buy the paraduma from a guy because it says v'yikchu and it has to be v'yikachu, that you're buying it only from a yid? And says the Gemara al yidei tagre Yisrael zoven, that the answer is that you have to say that when the Chachamim came to buy the paraduma from the guy, because according to Rabbi Eliezer you're not allowed to buy it from the guy, so there was a broker, a Yiddish broker, that bought the paraduma off of the guy, and then the Yidden bought it from this Yiddish broker, from this Yiddish merchant. And the same regarding the story before, regarding the Avnei Shoyim, that they needed for the Ephod, that they brought it, they didn't buy it directly from Adama ben Esina. They wanted to buy it through a Yid that was going to buy it off of him and then sell it to the Yidden. Therefore, there's no question on Rabbi Eliezer's opinion and what Shila said. According to Rabbi Eliezer, that you learn from the pasuk v'yikachu, that has to be dafka through a Yid. Okay, that's time to negate to this whole story of Dama ben Esina, which it's brought in the Gemara in Kiddushin and the Sugi of Kibbud Aveim. So there's a question that the Rishonim ask. First of all, does this mean that if a person knows that his father could make a massive amount of money and he's asleep, she shouldn't wake him up, and the father should lose this major income? He knows that his father would be happy if he wakes him up and brings him this income. So la halacha, it's actually brought that a person should wake up his father. And this story, why didn't he wake up his father? So according to one opinion, the reason is because the precious gems didn't belong to the father. It belonged to Dam ben Esina himself, and his father wouldn't have made a penny off of this. Or others say that his father was not a sane individual, and he didn't care about the money, as I was mizagin. Another point that the Rishonim bring up is that the Gemara in Kedushin says that when it comes to Kibbud Aveim, the mitzvah of Kibbud Aveim does not require the son to lose any money or to spend any money on his father. So why over here are we saying that the mitzvah of Kibbud Aveim goes to this extent that he had to lose money for his father? So there's different terutzim for this. One of the terutzim is that the person doesn't have to spend money for Kibbud Aveim for his father, but over here he didn't spend money. Over here he lost a possible income. That a person is mechoyev for Kibbud Aveim, even if he doesn't have to spend money. It's one of the terutzim. Rashi here says that if you see by a guy that he fulfilled Kibbud Aveim to this extent, bottom Rashi says, the kol sheken Yisroel mitzvah al kach. Definitely a yid that has a mitzvah. This is a guy that doesn't have even the mitzvah of Kibbud Aveim. Definitely a yid that has the mitzvah. So the Mefarshim explain, and the Rebbe brings this concept in a sikha also, that by a guy, Kibbud Aveim is based on a seichel inyan. The Hakaras HaTov, the father that brought him to the world and raised him. By a yid, the Kibbud Aveim is not just a seichel inyan. The Kibbud Aveim is in the Aseres HaDibris on the first five, which is Ben Adam LaMokim. Because by a yid, the Kibbud Aveim is the shutfus between the father and the mother and the Eibishter that brought this child into the world. And by a yid, the father and the mother are keli for the gili of koyach ha'ein seif that comes into the world. When a person is mechabed his father and mother, he's being mechabed the Eibishter that's mislabish in them. It's mamish like being mechabed Eivisher. So the mitzvah by Yidden is to a completely different level. So therefore, kol shekem by a Yid, that there has to be kibbud aveim to a much greater degree. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. The question on Rabbi Eliezer. So here the Gemara now goes back to the etzem point that we said before, that according to Rabbi Eliezer you can't buy a para aduma from a guy, not because of what Sheila said. Sheila said the reason is because of the pasuk v'yikachu, v'yikchu, v'yikachu. But before the Gemara said that the pshat according to Rabbi Pedas is because you're concerned that the reviyah, that a guy had a relation with this animal. So the Gemara asks Rabbi Eliezer, lo chayish l'reviyah. Rabbi Eliezer is not concerned for reviyah. And you could, in other words, the Gemara here is asking, the Gemara's question actually is on on Shila's pshat. It's mashma from Shila is saying that Rabbi Eliezer, the reason he holds you can't buy from a guy is only because of this drasha from the pasuk that it says yichchu and read it v'yikachu. But the pshat that Rabbi Pedas said before, which is that Rabbi Eliezer holds you can't buy from a guy because of the chash of reviyah, that Shila didn't hold of. So the Gemara asks here now, based on what we see here in the discussion in this brayse between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, that the reason of Rabbi Eliezer was actually because of reviyah, not because of this drasha that Shila said. So again, Rabbi Eliezer lechayish l'reviyah is the reason Rabbi Eliezer holds that you can't buy from a guy. Is it not because he's concerned for reviyah? But we learned in the brayse that the discussion between Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim went as follows. They said to Rabbi Eliezer, from this very story itself here, that they asked him, how is it possible that they bought from a guy and and they bought the paraduma from him? And others, like here the Gemara has another version that some said Remetz Shmai, that his name was not Dama, but his name was Remetz. And Rabbi Eliezer, so now here this Brayse says what Rabbi Eliezer responded. He said, Misham Raya, from this that they bought the paraduma from Dama ben Esina, are you bringing a proof against my opinion? Yisrael, the Yidden were guarding this paraduma from the moment it was born to be sure that there was no reviyah, that no guy had a relation with this animal. So therefore we see here from the response of Rabbi Eliezer that the concern here is reviyah. Not like what Sheila said, that the point is that there's a pasuk that says it has to be bought after from a Yid. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Eliezer, Tarti Islay. According to Rabbi Eliezer, there are two different points. One is Kiche, the lashon of the pasuk, v'yikachu, that you have to buy from a Yid, and v'chayish nami l'reviyah. And then there's a second point, that there's the concern of reviyah when it is coming from a guy. So both are true, and this is really also based on what the Gemara already proved before in Daf Chav Gimel, that you see by Rabbi Eliezer that he said that you shouldn't buy any behemoth for any carbon from a guy, not only paraduma. So that must mean that it's not only the drush of the pasuk v'yikachu, but it's also because of the chash of reviyah. So there's two reasons according to Rabbi Eliezer.
Why do you need two reasons?
One by paraduma, which is minatayre, and the other one is a chash reviyah, which is only with the rabbanan. So it could be that the reason minatayre by paraduma is more chamer. But over there, he did nafkamina here is this point that even if you're mishamrim, it's not gonna help. It's not gonna help with mishamrim because you can't buy from a guy, and for that you need something additional. That it has to be, like the Gemara said before, Tagre Yisrael, a broker in between. Right. So that's only by a paraduma, but by every other carbon, as long as if you guard it, it would be enough. So now here the Gemara stops on this point that I just said. That Rabbi Eliezer responded that they were able to buy the para aduma. Why? Because they guarded this para aduma, that they were sure that there was no chash reviyah. So now Amar, that Yisrael Mishama Rabbi Eliezer said that they guarded it, and that went from when Mishah from the moment that it was born. Frek the Gemara, that's not enough. V'nechish, we should still be concerned. Dilmer Ravi li'ima, maybe there was a relation with the mother of this paraduma, kiava mebre, when the mother was already pregnant with this paraduma, and that would be a problem with the baby that was born, and it can't be used for paraduma. Why not? Omar Rave said, Vlad hanegachas. If there's a baby that's born from a cow that gored a person and killed a person, and in such a case, this cow is a sheira niskal, has the halacha that has to be stoned to death, and now it gives birth. So this baby that's born, asa, will also be he uvlada. Both why? Because he uvlada nakhu. When the mother gores and kills someone, it's the mother together with the baby that's part of the body of the mother. Ubar yerech imay. That's the expression the Gemara says, that when it's still in the mother's womb, it's considered to be like part of the body of the mother. So therefore, this baby that's born also gored and killed, and therefore you can't use it for a carbon. It's asaba no. Rashi says this has to be a case where there was no Eidim that it gored, because if there were Eidim, then it would be stoned to death, it would be killed. But there was no Eidim for this, and therefore you can't kill it, and then it gives birth. You can't use the baby born for a carbon. And similar, regarding what we're talking about here, Vlad Hanir Bas, Aser, because he Vlad Nirbu. If there's an animal that someone was Reiva, had a relation with it, so then the baby that's born also can't be brought for a carbon, because the baby was part of the body of the mother when this Aveda was done with it. So if so over here, you're saying that the Yidden guarded this Para Aduma from the moment that it was born, but that doesn't help. Maybe they had a relation with the mother when it was pregnant with this animal. So therefore the Gemara corrects and says, Eime, you have to read and understand what Rabbi Eliezer was saying is, Yisrael Mishamir Maisa, the Yidden were guarding this Para Aduma Mishasha Noitzra, from the moment of the beginning of its pregnancy. That's when they began guarding this Para Aduma. And the Gemara will soon explain how it is that they knew that it was pregnant with a Para Aduma. How did they know this? Okay, so we'll see. The Gemara will explain that point. But the Gemara is still not satisfied with this. Maybe the concern should be even before the pregnancy. Maybe there was a relation with the mother, and that would also be a problem, because the Tanakh, the Mishnah says, "Kol hapsulin legabe mizbeach." Any behemoth that's possible to be brought in the mizbeach, v'ladiseyen mutarin. So the Tanakhama here says, or in this Mishnah, the Tana says that the baby born from this animal that's possible to the mizbeach is mutter, because the baby is already a different entity after it's born. But the Tanya Allah, on this we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Eliezer Oyser. Rabbi Eliezer says that whatever behem is aser, then even the baby born from it will also be aser. So therefore over here, regarding the Vlad that's born from this mother, even if they had a relation with the mother before the pregnancy, but then the baby that's born, the Para Aduma, should be aser. So they would have to guard the mother even from before. That's the shaila here. Okay, now the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says that the Vlad that's born from a behemah that's aser is also aser is midrabanan. It's not an ism min ha-Torah. It's because it's bozui. It's something which is despicable. It's born from something which is aser, so therefore it can't be brought as a carbon as well. But now here the Gemara actually brings that there's two ways how to explain here this machlekes, whether a Vlad born from a mother that's also for a carbon, when exactly is there a machlekes about this? So says the Gemara, Hani chel Rave, the Omar Rave, Omar Rav Nachman. So according to Rave, we could answer this, because Rave said in the name of Rav Nachman, machlekes, this argument here regarding a Vlad born from a behemoth that's aser, kishanervu kishahem mukdashin. If the Aveda was done with this animal after it was already made to be kachim. So then is the argument if the behemoth born from it will be aser or not. Aval kishain chulin. But if the Aveda that was done with this animal when it was still chulin, and then you will makdish it, divrei hakol mutarin. So then everybody agrees that the Vlad that's born is like a new metzias. Before, when the mother was aser, when it's chulin, and now it's hektish, it's like a new thing, everybody would agree that it's mutter. So over here regarding this Para Aduma, so even if an Aveda was done with the mother, there's no problem with the Para Aduma. The Aveda was done with the mother when it's chulin. So then it's not a question. But that he said in the name of Rav Nachman that machloik is kishenerbu kishen chulin. That the argument here is even in a case where the Aveda was done with this animal, the mother, when it's chulin. And even then, Rabbi Eliezer says the Vlad that's born will be asked to be brought as a carbon. Aval kishem mukdash, according to this interpretation, if the Aveda was done with the mother when it was already hektish, divrei hakol asur, here everybody would agree that it's aser. So then ma'ik l'meima. So according to this interpretation of Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, the question remains, it's not enough the fact that they guarded the Para Aduma itself, and even the fact that they guarded the mother from the point of pregnancy, because even the mother from before the point of pregnancy, if there was an Aveda done with the mother, then the Vlad would be aser. Therefore the Gemara amends this again. It says, Amos, so you have to say, Yisrael, Hoyu Mishamre Maisa Le'ima Mishasha Noitzra. They guarded the mother from the moment that the mother was born, or actually not even from before when the mother was born, from the moment of the pregnancy of the mother by the grandmother. From that moment, that's when they guarded already this mother to see that there should be no Aveda done here, and therefore that mother was totally mutter, and therefore the Vlad is going to be mutter. But now let's go one generation up. But maybe the mother of the mother, maybe it's that cow that they had a relation with it, and then the Vlad is aser, and then the Vlad of the Vlad, the grandchild, should also be aser as well, according to Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, that says that we aser the Vlad as well. So the Gemara says, Kula hai loichashina. This far, the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer does not go. As I mentioned before, the whole issa of Rabbi Eliezer that you shouldn't bring a vlad of a behemoth that's also for a carbon is because it's bozui, because it's despicable bringing something that was born from something which is asr. But a grandchild, because the issa was done with the mother of the mother, that's already too far over here. Rabbi Eliezer says it's not bozui, it's a new mitzias and it's going to be mutter. So that's how far the Yidden were careful with this paraduma, that when the mother was pregnant, was in the state of pregnancy, that is, from Neitzra. When the mother was already Neitzra, that's from when they were regarding to be sure that they'll have this paraduma.
Rabbi, so the Yidden camped out in Ashkelon
Yeah.
where this mother was,
Yeah.
maybe he's going to have a paraduma.
Yeah, the Gemara will soon explain. Let's see a little more. The Gemara will explain that they knew that this family, Dama ben Asina, has a track record for paraduma.
Very
Let's
nice.
see. Now here the Gemara addresses what we said before. So Mamar, what did we say here? Yisrael Mishamar Ma'isa Mishosha Neitzra. They're guarding this paraduma from the time that the pregnancy of the paraduma began. Minaya Dina. How do they know that this is a pregnancy that's going to be a birth of a paraduma? And also according to the final pshat, the Gemara said over here that they were guarding the mother of the paraduma from when its pregnancy began. How do they know to expect a paraduma here? Amar Rav Kahana says, Kais Adom Avirim Lufaneh B'Shasha Eila Aleh Zachar. That at the time when the Zachar and the Nekeva are mating, so when you bring a red cup in front of the in front of the cow, so that's guiding that it should become pregnant with a paraduma. This is like we find regarding what it says by Yaakov Avinu, that he put up the white makles with spots on it in order that the animal should give birth, similar to what it sees. Over here as well, this is a method that's done in order for it to give birth to a paraduma. So therefore they were expecting to have a paraduma. If that's the case, so then you couldn't. Why is a paraduma something which is so expensive and it's so rare? There's a very simple method of how you bring the birth of a paraduma. Answers the Gemara, the reason is, even if a paraduma is born, but we know that hoyel, ushtei side is paislisbach, because 2 years, passel, a paraduma, so it could be totally red, but just 2 years that are not red, it'll be possible to have a fully red paraduma. That's something which is very rare. No, so the Gemara says, if that's the case, so the question comes back, so Umay Shna did who? So if so, even after they would do this method of bringing this red cup at the time when the animals are mating, how would they expect that by this family of Dama ben Asina that it would be a paraduma that would be kosher? They shouldn't, they could still be some hairs that will pass it. Amar Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana says, B'muchzekes. This family of Dama ben Asina had a track record that this method works very well. By their animals, that they bring this red cup and it gives birth to a paraduma that's fully red. So because it was mechzekeh, so therefore they were camping out and they already were guarding by the mother when the mother was in pregnancy, in order that then eventually when the child was born here, they had this paraduma available for them. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And so what Rabbi Eliezer say? That you can't buy any carbon from a guy. Why? Because there's a chash of reviyah. The guy had a relation with this animal, so you can't buy from a guy. Regarding this, Yosef, Rav Ami, Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, Akila de Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. They were sitting by this room, the entrance room of the house of Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Pasachad benai v'omar. So one of them began and said that what was quoted before, that V'chein hoy Rabbi Eliezer paisel b'chol ha'karbanis. Rabbi Eliezer said that it's possible to bring any carbon to buy from a guy. Chol ha'karbanis kulam. So Pasach idach minayu va'amar. So another one of them responded and said, what did the Chachamim, the colleagues of Rabbi Eliezer, respond to him to prove that you could bring a carbon from a guy? They brought the pasuk where it says, Kol tzayin kedar yikbetzulach v'gaimer, that all the sheep from Kedar, which refers to the Bnei Yishmael, will be brought and will be sacrificed as a carbon. So you see that you can bring even from Bnei Yishmael. Amalem Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer responded and said, Kulam, Geirim, Grurim, Haim, Lasad Lavai. This is a pasuk which is a nevuah, and what will be Lasad Lavai, that the karbanos will come from all Gayim, and Lasad Lavai, the Gayim will come and act as Geirim. The term Geirim Grurim means that even though we don't accept Geirim at that point, but nevertheless, they're going to be interested in joining Klal Yisrael regardless, and therefore they're going to find some Bezdin, which is not a proper Bezdin, which will accept them as Geirim, and they're going to fulfill mitzvahs like Yidden. And therefore, Lasad Lavai, there's no concern about taking an animal from a guy for a carbon because there's no chash of reviyah at that point. Now, Omer Rav Yosef, So Rav Yosef says about this, Ma'ikra, where do we see this, that Lasad Love, the Goyim will act like Gedim Grudim? Because it says, Ki Az Epach himself a brood of a Goyim, all Goyim will be transformed, and they'll come to join to act like Yidden. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye asks on this pasuk that Rav Yosef brought, but Vidilme Ma'ivdik Echavim with the Hadabahu, maybe this pasuk is only saying that the Goyim will not anymore serve Avoda Zara, but it doesn't mean that they'll drop their behavior in any other areas as well. Amalei Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef responded and said, no, the pasuk goes on to say, La'avdoi Shchem Echad, that they will serve all the Eibishter like Yidden in unison, like Yidden Mamish, not just regarding Avoda Zara, but in every area. So therefore, Lasad you can take from Goyim Karbonis as well. La'avdoi Shchem Echad Ksiv, that's what the pasuk says. Now here the Gemara brings another version of the same exact discussion, but just a different in the names of who exactly said what. Rav Papa Masni Hachi. Rav Papa had this discussion exactly the way we just recorded it. But Rav Zvid Masni Hachi. Rav Zvid recorded it differently. That the Tarvayu Omri, that it was Rav Yitzchak Nafche, it was Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafche, they both said together, before it said that one said to the other, so he added that they both said together, V'chein Hoyer Rav Eliezer Paisel B'chola Karbonis, that Rav Eliezer Pasel, that you can't buy any Karbonis from a guy, and V'tarvayu Amri, and then they both together said that Umay Sivule Chavroy Rav Eliezer. What did the colleagues answer Rav Eliezer? They asked him from the pasuk where it says, Kol Tzayin Kedar Yikptzu Lach V'Gaimer. And Amar Rav Eliezer, and on this the answer is that what did Rav Eliezer answer them? That it goes on Lasad Lovei Kulam Gedim Grudim Heim Lasad Lovei Umay Kara. And what is the pasuk for this? It says Ki Oz Epach Al Amim Safa Bruder Likre Kula B'Shem Hashem. That's the pasuk that's brought in this. And according to this version, according to the version the Gemara had before, it's Rav Yosef that was quoting this pasuk. But according to this version, Rav Yosef actually is the one that asked on this. Maskef lo Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef asks, maybe this pasuk only proves that they won't serve Avoda Zara anymore. And Amalei Abaye, according to this version, it's Abaye that gave the explanation that La'avdei Shchem Echad Ksiv, since it says La'avdei Shchem Echad, it means that they're going to behave like Yidden, not only regarding Avoda Zara, but in other things and everything else as well. And therefore we can buy Karbonis from Goyim Lasad Lavei. Okay, now here the Gemara is going to bring another number of questions where we find that Karbonis are bought from Goyim. So Meisver, the question was asked, the pasuk says, Vayem Moshe. Moshe says to Parei, Gam ata titin biyadein zvachim v'oilis, that we're going to leave Mitzrayim and you're going to give us animals to be used as Karbonis. So we see that he's taking from Parei. And says the Gemara, Kaida Matan Teire Shani. Before Matan Teire, it's different. Then it was not a problem yet. Tashema, another question is, it says by Yisrael, Vayikach Yisrael Chaysa Moshe Oilo Zvachim Lelekim, that he took from his Karbonis, from his animals that he had, and he brought them as a carbon. And it would seem that he brought them from the animals that he owned, that he brought with himself, from Midian, and he brought them as a carbon. And says the Gemara, Yisrael, Nami Kaida Matan Teira. Yisrael also came before Matan Teira, and then there's no problem to bring from animals bought from a guy. So the Gemara says it's actually a machlekes when exactly Yisrael came. Yisrael Kaida Matan Teira. That's a good answer according to the opinion that says that Yisrael came before Matan Teira. But Elo Lamanda Omar Yisrael Lacha Matan Teira. But according to the opinion, this is a machlokes in the Gemara in the end of Zvachim, and another opinion says that Yisrael came after Matan Teira. So Ma'ikal Meima. So what are we going to say? So it means that we see here that Yisrael brought Karbonis from himself, and he was a guy after Matan Teira. How could you bring Karbonis according to Rabbi Eliezer from a guy? So Ella, the answer is Yisrael mi Yisrael Zavan. Yisrael, he bought his Karbonis from the Yidden. He didn't take from his own animals to bring a carbon. Another question, Tashema, it says in the pasuk, Vayome Shol Ma Meleki Haviyim Mashachom Al Meta Vatzaim VaBakar L'man Zvayach LaShem Lekecha. That when he was supposed to wipe out the entire nation of Amalek, but he brought with him from the animals, from the sheep and so on, to bring karbonis from the meta, from the best of the sheep to bring for karbonis. That's what Shaul HaMelech says. The question is though, how are they bringing karbonis from Goyim, from the flock, from the sheep, from the Amalekim? And so the Gemara, my meitav, when it says that they're bringing from the best of the sheep for karbonis, the may meitav. They're not bringing from the animals themselves, according to Rabbi Eliezer. They're going to sell these animals, and with the money, buy karbonis from Yidden to bring as a carbon. So the Gemara says, but if that's the case, so maishna meitav, why only from the best animals? They're not even bringing these animals themselves. They're just selling it and bringing the money. The answer is, the reason why they took from the best animals is because that they should be able to sell it quickly and bring from the money karbanis that they're buying from Yidden. Another question, Rabbi Eliezer Toshama, the pasuk says, "Vayoma Ravna al David." Avravna, which was from the Yevusim that was living in Yerushalayim, he says to David, Yikach v'yal Adoni HaMelech hatoiv be'enov re'ei abakar la'oila, bring from the cattle for carbon oila, and v'hamerigim v'klei abakar le'etzim, the merigim and the klei abakar will be used for the wood, for the carbon. The Gemara will soon explain exactly what merigim is, but over here you see that David HaMelech is bringing karbanis that he took from Aravna, a guy. And says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, Aravna Gertoishavaya. This Aravna was a guy, but he was a Gertoishav that doesn't serve Avoda Zara, and he's Mekabel Shav Mitzvahs B'nei Noyach, which includes the Isser of Reviyah, so there's no chash of any relation with animals. So therefore, even according to Rabbi Eliezer, you can bring from him. Now the Gemara explains, my Rigim, what is this Rigim that it says that he gave David HaMelech? Amar Ule Mita Shel Turbil. It's a bed that's called a Turbil. My mitta shel turbil. So the Gemara explains it's not really a bed. It's a iza de korkese de daishan. This is a board. It's like a thick board of wood that has in it it's made in it like sharp teeth in this wood, like the teeth of a goat. And so what do you do with this this heavy board that has in it sharp teeth? They turn it upside down with the sharp teeth and they put it on the tvua, and that's how you thresh the tvua to get out the kernels. That's what this is used for. And that was the board of wood that he gave to David HaMelech to be used for the wood. Amar Rav Yosef says, he brings a source for this lashon, the taich of the word merigim. Ma'ikra, we find this in another place in the pasuk where it says, Hine samticha le'meirig chorotz. You'll be like a meirig, which is sharp, chodosh, that's new. Bal pifiyah has like very strong blades. Tadush harim v'taduk ugvais kamoitz tasim. That it will thresh the mountains and it'll crush the hills that will become like mites tasim, will become like the chaff which flies in the air. Another pasuk that they brought and asked Akasha on Rabbi Eliezer, that how could you bring from Goyim? So Mesa, the question is, the pasuk says, Vesaparois helo oila lashem. This is in the famous story regarding the Arim, that when the Arim was captured by the Plishtim, and this Arim caused the Plishtim all kinds of troubles, and eventually they wanted to see if the problems that they're having comes from the Arim, so they sent this Arim but they put it on a wagon, and they tied the wagon to these cows, and they sent it to go, and they wanted to see where is it going to go. So now when the Paris, they went on their own, they came to the Yidden, which were then in Beis Shemesh, and that's Israel in Beis Shemesh, so the Yidden took these Paris that came from the Plishtim, and they brought it as a carbon. So you see over here that they're using these Paris that came from the Plishtim as a carbon. And says the Gemara, the fact that they brought these paris as a carbon was a unique thing that was instruction for that time. Otherwise, you wouldn't bring it as a carbon because it comes from a guy. And the Gemara says, you must say this, regardless, even without Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, that it can't be brought from a guy. Because if you're not going to say that it was unique, Ayla nekeva mi ikke. Do you ever bring a carbon ayla from a female? Over here, they're taking a para, a cow, a female, and they're bringing it as a ayla. So the Gemara says that's not a proof. Umay kushya. What's your question? Tilme bebamas yachid. Maybe over here, because at that time the Yidden, this was after Mishkan Shiloh was destroyed. That's what happened then when the whole Plishtim came and fought Yidden, and Mishkan Shiloh was destroyed. And at this point, Yidden were only a noiv. And that when they were a noiv, didn't have the halacha of like a Beis HaMikdash or a Mishkan. It was like a bama yachid, like an individual that sets up a bama. And in that case, you can bring even a nekeva as a carbon oila. When a person brings a nekeva as a oila and a bama yachid, it's allowed. Shana, because the pasuk says, "Vayikach Shmuel tleh chalav." He took a tleh chalav, which chalav means that if it gives milk, so this is a female echad. Vayalei oila, and he brought it as a carbon oila. So you see that it could be brought. You can bring over here. This since this was a bamas yachid, as I mentioned, there was a naiv, so it can be brought. So there's no raya from the fact that they brought in a keva that this was a ra shah. This is a bamas yachid. But not, the Gemara clarifies the raya of Shmuel, Vayalehu, it says in the pasuk Zachar mashma, even though it says that it was a tlech chalav, but it says Vayalehu lashon Zachar. Vayale ksiv. But the kri, it's read lashon Zachar, but the ksiv is lashon nekeva. So therefore, it was a nekeva. But as the Gemara said, it's not a raya from that it was a hira shah, because you can bring it in a bamas yachid. Okay, this is the conclusion of all the different questions the Gemara had on Rabbi Eliezer regarding bringing a carbon from Goyim. And the Gemara answered all the questions. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to a point that it said before on Daf Chav Beis in the beginning of the Perek, where the Gemara there brought what Rav said, that you could bring a carbon that you buy from a guy. Why? Because there's no chashash of reviyah, because a guy does not want to do this with his own animal, because it'll ruin, it'll be oiker, it'll cause harm and damage his own animal. Therefore, you can buy a behemoth from a guy. So the Gemara now says regarding this, Rabbi Yechanan said that gvul yeshlo, there is a limitation to this. It depends what the age of this animal is. If it's an animal that's less than 3 years old, nek keres. So then, if there will be reviyah, this will damage the animal. So then, what Rav said is true, that you can buy it from a guy, because you could assume that the guy will not do reviyah with the animal, because he knows that it will damage his animal. But bas gimel shanim ain't nek keres. But once it's already at the age from 3 and up, so then, even if there was reviyah, even if you had a relation with the animal, it will not damage the animal. So over here, you cannot buy this animal from a guy. So now the Gemara says, based on this point, Rabbi Yechanan says, Eisvei kolhani to yufte. So all the questions from all the different psukim that the Gemara just brought up before was asked to Rabbi Yechanan, that says here that you can't buy an animal from a guy when it's from 3 years and older. So all these questions were asked from these cases where you see that they bought animals for a carbon from a guy. And Shani Lohu, and he answered them, Pchusa mibas gimel shanim. That in all these cases, the carbon was brought from an animal that's less than 3 years old, and there, the svara that Rav says applies, that the guy is afraid of doing reviyah with the animal because it will damage his animal. But above age 3, you cannot buy an animal from a guy. Okay, but now the Gemara goes back to one of the questions that it asked before, the last question that it asked before. Toshema, when it said before, Ves haparais helu eilu lashem, that the case of the parais that came and brought the Arim back, and they took those cows and they brought it as a carbon. And regarding this as well, according to Rabbi Yechanan, you could answer that those parais were less than 3 years old, and therefore you can be sure that there's no chash reviyah. But on this though, regarding this case, it's difficult to give this answer. Maskaf la Rav Huna Bereder Rav Nosson. So Rav Huna Bereder Rav Nosson asks, Im came. If so, Hainu. What it says over there, Ves B'neihem Kolu Baboyis. The Pelishtim, what were they trying to do? They were trying to test and see whether all the troubles and the tsar that this the Aran that was amongst them caused them, was the taka being caused by the Aran or not. So what do? They took a para and they separated the para from its children. They put the children of the para in the house, and then they took the para and tied it to a wagon, and they wanted to see if the para is going to miraculously go to Yidden, even though the children of the para are being locked behind. That's what they did. And the para still went, leaving its children behind. So what do we see? That we're talking about paras that gave birth. Now, pchusa mibas gimel shanim mi kayolda. If you're saying that the case here is that it was less than 3 years old, could it give birth? But Vatanya, we learned in the Braise, or this is a Mishnah, Vatnan, the Mishnah says, Para v'chamer, that by a cow or a donkey, mibas, now the word mibas is really not correct over here, it should be bas or benois, gimel. If you buy a cow or a donkey that's age 3, exactly 3 years old, and now you're buying this from a guy, and you're not sure now if this cow or donkey will give birth, is this a b'chayr or not? Because you don't know what happened before by the guy. So, but if you bought it at age 3, vade l'kayin. When it gives birth now, this is a b'chayr. It definitely belongs to the kayin, because before age 3, it couldn't give birth. Now, mikan ve'elech though, if you buy it when it's older than age 3, then suffik. When it gives birth, and you don't know if it gave birth before, so it's a suffik if it's a b'chayr or not. And in such a case of a suffix, so Rashi says regarding a para, you're going to have to wait until it gets a mum, and then you could shecht it and you could eat it. You don't have to give it to the kayin, because but once it has a mum, then it doesn't have the kedusha anymore for a carbon. And by the chamar, you're going to have to separate the seh in order to redeem it. And then you could take that sand, eat it for yourself, again, because the point is, but the point is that you see over here that under age 3, the para and the chamar do not give birth. So you can't give that answer that Rav Yechanan said before. So therefore the answer is, regarding this question, is like the Gemara said before, that it was a Hirah Shah in that case, that he brought a para from Goyim as a carbon. Since the Gemara brought up this case regarding these parais that brought back the Araim b'derech Nes, it darshans the pasuk that it says there, Vayisharna parais b'derech al derech beis shemesh v'goymer. So the simple pshat is, Vayisharna, they went in a straight path until they came to the Yidden in Beis Shemesh. My Vayisharna, the Gemara darshans the word Vayisharna, Amr Rav Yechanan Mishum Rav Meir, Sha'amru Shira, that these parais were singing. They said Shira when they came and brought the Araim back. Rav Zutre Bar Tuvia Omar Rav Betuvia says in the name of Rav, Sheyishru Peneyem Keneged Araim Va'omru Shira, that they turned their faces back to facing the Araim, and they said Shira. Or my Shira Omru, what is the Shira that these parais said? Amar Rav Yechanan Mishum Rav Meir Oz Yashim Moshe V'nei Yisrael. They said the Shira that the Yidden said by Kriyas Yamsuf. From Rashi, it's mashma, not that they said the full Shira, but they said like a part of the Shira, Ki Goy Go, the power of the Eibishter that brought back the Aron. Rav Yechanan the day Rav Yechanan himself said the Shira they said was Va'amartem Bayemahu Haidul Hashem Kiru V'Shmei V'Gaime. Rav Shimon ben Lakish Amar Mizmeira Yasma. They said a mizmar in Tilim that's called a mizmar that's an orphan because there's no name of who is the one that is the author of this mizmar. Mizmar Shirul Hashem Shir Chadash Ki Niflas Asa Hashia Lo Yeminai Uzraya Kotche. Rabbi Laza Amar Hashem Malach Yigzu Amim. That's the Yigzu Amim. This is in the Mefarshim. Rashi here actually says different pshatim regarding Yigzu Amim. Rashi says they said this shira because of all the makis, all the pain and suffering that the Plishtim had when they were keeping the Aron amongst them. They said the shira of Hashem Malach Geis Lavish at that time. Rav Yitzchak Navcha Amar, they said as follows: Roini Hashita, that the Aron, which is made from Shita, from the Atze Shitim, so you should sing to the Eibishter, His Sneififi, Beroiv Hadarech, you should lift yourself up with your great splendor, Hamachushekes, Berik Meizav, which is made beautiful, it's connected with gold and with silver as well. Hamahulala, Bedvir, Armain, Umufuara, Ba'adi Adoyim, that it has inside in it the Dvir, the Dvir over here refers to the Sefer Torah, and the luchais of the Sefer Torah, which is inside the Aron, and Adi Adoyim, and there's no greater, Adi Adoyim usually means a crown. There's no greater crown that's than the Aron itself. That's the shir that the Pare sang. Now Ravashi Masnin Olaha, the Rabbi Yitzchak Aha. This shira that we just said here, that Rabbi Yitzchak said, so Rav Ashi said that this shira was said at a different time period, earlier on when Yidden were in the Midbar. And that is Vayihi ben Saya Aron, Vayem Moshe Kum Hashem, that Moshe Rabbeinu said that the Aron will travel ahead of Yidden, and that's how the Yidden will be able to travel. So Yisrael my Amru, how did Yidden respond to this shira that Rabbi Yitzchak just said? Amr Rabbi Yitzchak, Reini Ashita v'cholo. That's the taich of that's the conclusion of this. The Gemara is going to bring different things now connected to this. Okay, we can stop over there.